Hi everyone, this is Sanjana from Mockat, and today I'm continuing the series where we're bringing in our students' experiences and how they've cracked CAT or ZAT or any of these exams and got through a top B school. So today we have Shruthii with us, and Shruthii is somebody who's probably not the typical MBA candidate, right? She's not from a commerce background or from an engineering background, right? She has a BSc in chemistry, and her work also has been pretty much into that core chemistry aspect. But somewhere that drive for an MBA was something which she had. She had taken CAT once, not with a lot of prep, but then she decided that yes, I want to get through a top B school, and she gave it her all. And today she's got through IIM Lucknow, which is my campus. So I'm super happy for that, right? And today we learn a little bit more about her journey and how she prepared and what was her interview experience. So thanks, Shruti, for coming and doing this. And while I've told everybody a little bit in brief, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your studies and your background?
Yes, ma'am. It's a pleasure to be here. So, yeah, as ma'am had mentioned, my name is Shruthi, and so my background is a chemistry background, and I've done my UG and BSc chemistry, and my work is also related to chemistry and nothing related to an MBA or the conventional work ex that is required. So, what I would like to say is that so while being in my UG, I decided like towards my final year, I guess. So I was like, probably I could take an MBA because I had a lot of leadership responsibilities that I taken up, like being the coordinator of the Fusion Dance Club or the assistant coordinator of the chemistry club, where we've like managed like 50 to 100 students, and where I've also like planned events like when the faculty was not able to help us, we were like the entire entire responsibility was on us. So and it went well also. So I somehow had this interest towards like managing people or like towards management.
Correct. No, which is exactly right, because that is what you do, right? So this thing which you mentioned where you've managed fests and all, when it comes to doing your MBA, and you'll see that as you go now, that pretty much everything is managed by the students, and along with the studies, it is these things which help us really learn and sort of like you develop the skills which we will need for a company. And this other bit which you said, right? When we talk about doing an MBA, what do we become? We end up becoming a manager, right? So you're working with a team, you're managing a team, you're leading a group of people. And if that is something which you've already done, again, those are the exact right skill sets that you need. So I mean, we've of course spoken about it, but that's how it is, right? Where your studies, your background might not be relevant, but somewhere if you have that experience and you have the skill set and you know that you're good at it, then that definitely is a great reason for doing an MBA.
Yeah. So that was how took up the option of doing an MBA, because even in my work, there was not a lot of upskilling that I could do, or like the roles and responsibilities were only related to core chemistry. So testing and doing experiments and all of that. So I thought probably I need like a career pivot and I want to like get into a management role. So that is when I decided, so okay, let me do an MBA, and that too, when doing an MBA, why not from an IIM? So that's how I started like preparing for CAT.
Absolutely. And in fact, I mean, simply because I've been speaking about the studies being different, I want to highlight to anybody who's coming from a similar background that, see, at the end of the day, an MBA, I mean, you're learning the management functions, right? Be it finance or marketing or strategy, operations, whatever it is. If you have a differentiated background, like say something like, Shruti with a chemistry background, if there's any chemicals company, any pharmaceutical company, or any, medicine or anything like that, again, she definitely will have an advantage because she will understand the core product, say a little easier than me as a manager, or somebody with a commerce background or something like that, right? So always remember that if you have a differentiated background, that will be an advantage at some point, depending on the companies and also in the interviews, right? Because you're standing out a bit. So I mean, you were keen on an IIM and you had taken CAT before, but that was with like very minimal prep, right? So when you said yes, I want to give it another shot and I want to prepare this time and sort of get as high a score as possible, and of course you need a top score for IIMs. So how was the exam for you? Which were the sections which you found relatively tougher, and how did you deal with it?
Right. So with limited prep, I found all the three to be like difficult because it was not used. I was not used to those kind of answering or those kind of questions that were asked. And so what I did was I started off with quant because that seemed to be the most difficult. So I went through all the concept videos and then did all the practice questions and then also the past year questions that sir had kept on like emphasizing on. So I think those really helped me to like get the hang of solving the questions and that too in like the easier method that sir had always taught us. So that was what I did for quant. And for DILR, I initially was not able to solve even like half a case. Like I used to like find the logic and that's it. Like I was not able to solve it. But again, I had like listened to what sir had told me and he told me keep solving. So that's the mantra that I followed and I kind of like solved over 400 cases. I think by the end of my preparation, I was done with like 400 plus cases. Like all the QOTDs, the quiz of the days that were put up. And so we used to like, do that regularly so that we get the hang of it. And also then all the past year questions and the test cases that are there on the portal.
Right.
So these are things that I did again and again.
Just to sort of bring it now for those of you who are thinking about this, right? Oh, it seems such a huge number, 400. So I think the lessons themselves, every lesson will have at least, somewhere around 8 to 10 cases. So that will be 100 plus cases. Then on top of it, you have 25 mocks, another 15 sectional. So that's 40 into 4, that's 160 questions again there, right? So for example, if you've just signed up for mocks, whether it's at Mockat or anywhere, right? Then again, you'll have at least 100 to 150 cases. Daily quizzes, that's another 150, 160 which are there. And I've not even touched about the cases in the class, right? So even if someone's starting now, and I mean, it's such a great example, right? She was working and yet she pulled in that time saying that, okay, whether it is before work or weekends or evenings or whatever it is, let me take up that time and let me sort of like, solve those cases. And yeah, that's something which we keep saying, right? You solve 100 cases, you're getting to one case for sure. You solve 400 cases, probably 2 cases is what you can definitely get in the exam, right? And in the mocks, of course. Yeah. So yeah.
So as I kept solving, I kind of found out that like initially I took 40 to 50 minutes to solve like one case, and then it came down to like 10 to 15 minutes at the end. Like if it was easier, like the case was easy, I could solve it in like 10 minutes. So that was how easy it became after I solved so many. And also one thing that I did religiously was like do all the mock questions once the mock is done.
Right.
Since during the mock, maybe the logic would not strike you, but then after the mock, you have the time. So I again used to time myself and try it afresh. So that's when I kind of was able to solve them. And certain things which I was not able to solve, I think, with the solutions, I took help of it and tried my best to solve it. So that was one thing that helped me in DILR.
Right. No, and that is what it is about, right? You've got to find those cases which are easier or more doable. No one's, finishing, like Vignesh has a 99.95 or something, and even he's doing only 3 cases, right? So we have to find those, 1 or 2 cases, and typically 1 case means that, we are above the general sectional percentile, sectional cutoffs that we have, right? On the quant front, I think the other thing which I saw was that, while you were religiously prepping, somewhere towards the end, because we have these mock test taking strategy sessions, right? But somewhere towards the end, in the last month or so, I also saw your scores considerably going up. So had you like sort of picked up on the prep, or what worked well for you there?
So one thing that I noticed was that I kept forgetting the formulae or forgetting the concepts behind the questions. Like, so you have this method to go about the question. That is something that I kept forgetting after, like if I learn a new chapter, I used to forget the ones that I had learned like probably 2 months back. So one thing that I did was like I went to the concept revisions again and again. And also there was a speed concepts that I did, like so from time to time. And taking these daily quizzes were also really helpful, and sectional tests. Not to mention, because that was where I kind of like, even in the daily quizzes, we had like particular chapters that I did daily. But then when it comes to like all the chapters together, it was somewhere where I forgot everything. So that's when I thought that, so taking sectionals would really help, because that's what I did. I took sectionals. I kind of tried different strategies that worked for me.
I was just going to say,
And
sectionals do help with the strategy a lot. Because I
yeah,
think you were also someone who didn't go with the 688, right? You had a strategy which I would say is somewhat closer to what I do. So do you want to talk about that also a bit?
so the 688 strategy did not personally work for me. So I used to personally go through all the 22 questions and then pick the ones that are easy, that seem to be like something that I can solve immediately.
Right.
And I used to mark them for everything. So once I'm done reviewing all the questions, I come back and try to solve as many as possible that I've marked for review. And those that I cannot, I just leave them. And those theta questions are where I enter some value that I kind of have come up with.
Because you've done it half, like potentially what the answer could be.
So probably if I have like a doubt that that is the answer, I kind of enter that to the theta questions alone. So that's about my strategy for quant. And what really helped me towards the end was that I attended all of Sir's class, like the revision classes. So there even though I forgot a few concepts, there I was able to recollect everything, because Sir had like combined different sort of questions from each chapter. Like,
the past questions,
past questions. So there, like, I was able to like know, okay, so Pat like asked certain questions, and you can see that the pattern is also repeating sometimes. So those were like important questions that really helped me to understand the concept as well.
Right.
So I think that will really help me towards the end.
That's great to hear. So in fact, for anybody who's watching this, because there's like a version of those which are out on YouTube as well, so we'll just link that so that probably before CAT 2024 you could like go through that. So that's great to hear. But then I mean, while you spoke about verbal being different and of course it's very different from our school and college exams, where I mean college of course we didn't have English, but school exams where we have more of direct questions and all in RCs. I think on the verbal side you'd put in a fair amount of work. I mean, I don't remember any class which you didn't attend, and your mocks and all were also going great, right? But one thing which Shruti you have struggled with has been that a little bit of nervousness or anxiety, also because I think in your mind you were pretty clear that you're giving it a second time and you have to do that and you have to get through this year, and you were in slot 2, right, where you're going in with a strategy thinking that okay, verbal I'm going to ace it, I'm going to get a high score, I've been getting a high score, but it was the slot where verbal was the toughest, right? So what was your mindset when you were actually taking the CAT exam? What went through when you went in and you saw that the RCs or the questions are a little bit tougher? Just can you tell us a little bit? I think it is something which especially is going to be very helpful for those of you who are going to be, I mean the viewers who are going to be taking CAT for the first time, right? Because that's the experience that they're really understanding from you.
So I think the pressure like that got to me was the main reason for that I had, like the pressure of like this is the last attempt that I can do and all of that. So I was really stressed even throughout the mocks. Like I kept having like issues like, okay, I'm not doing well in this section, I don't know what's wrong. So I kept like fretting over it. But I think towards the end, towards like the final exam, I had Sir and you like constantly repeating that do not take this as your last thing. Just do it
for
what
it is.
Yeah. And have this mentality that you can, even if one section goes wrong, make sure that does not get to you and affect the other section. I think that was something that I kept repeating to myself, like even before I entered the examination hall. And that actually helped me, because verbal was the first section and it was like super like not easy, like not something that was like
hard.
Easy compared to in slot 2 I found the RCs to be difficult. So I'm the person who usually tries to maximize my score in RCs because that's what I was better at. So my personal opinion. And so what I used to do was I used to like focus on like completing the RCs. But this time when I went into the exam hall and when I had those RCs in front of me, I understood that they were not easy. So it was difficult to like understand the RCs, and I'm pretty sure answering them would also be difficult for me. So I try to limit myself to like only 2 RCs, and then I try to like solve a few MCQs. And for some reason, we had this compulsory question that was introduced in our section, and seeing that, I was just like, okay, is this some error or is this an actual thing?
Yeah, it's an additional stressor for you.
I was like, what is this new thing here? And so, but then again, I was like, okay, if it's for me, it's going to happen for everyone in my section, or for all the 3 sections probably. So what I did was I just marked like gave my best for that question. I tried to attend it, and I tried to attend a few MCQs, and then I kept reminding myself that, okay, fine, let's chill. We can probably maximize in DILR or Quant. Let's see how it goes.
And that's
So
such
that
a
was
great attitude to have, right? Because very few, and of course, I mean, the fact that you've taken mocks, you've attended the test strategy sessions, you know about things like scaling up, I'm sure that helps. But in the exam, it is not easy to have that mindset, especially for you, where we know that this, the anxiety is one of your problems, right? But it's such a great message. So I think if there's just one thing that you're taking from this video, it should be this: that one, if it's tough for you, it's going to be tough for everybody else, right? And it's a percentile game. You just need, like, the top percentiles. The marks don't matter. I mean, like, 99 percentile has shifted from 97 marks all the way down to like 75 marks when the exam has become tougher. So that's something which is there. And second is, again, another extremely good point is, in case, if even if it's your preferred section and it's going badly, right, you can always look to maximize marks in the other sections. And again, if verbal is tough, it probably means that DILR or Quant are going to be a little bit on the easier side, right? So I think a great attitude, and I think that is what ultimately helped you to get a great score. So
yes.
So I interrupted you. So then what happened? How did you feel going into DILR?
So going into DILR, so I kind of answered like it. I found one to be easy. So I was pretty sure, okay, let me first work on this. So first, as I always do, I went through like all the 4 cases in like 5 minutes. So that's the time that I take. And going through all of that, I found out like 2 were like doable. So I finished 1. And then the second one, second one also I completed. And then the third one, so I wanted to go for a third one to like maximize. And then what happened was I kind of understood the logic, but somewhere I couldn't like solve it entirely. So I kind of solved half of it and answered like one question that was something that I could get out of what I had solved. So that is what happened for DILR. And for Quant, it was like really difficult. So using my logic, when I went through all the questions, I found out that everything seemed to be difficult. And that's when the stress started hitting me. Like I was like, okay, so I wanted to maximize here, but then like all the questions seemed to be difficult. And since Quant is already my difficult section, least favorite section, I was even more distressed by the end of it. But again, I tried to remind myself that this is not the end. So let me just give it a shot. So what I did was, again, I marked all the mark per review questions. I came back to them. I tried solving them. I had marked about, I think, 12. But when I had gone through a few, I was sure that I can't get to the end of the question within the time. So then I ended up answering 5, and thank God all 5 seemed to be right. So that's the only thing that I did for Quant.
Right.
So that's how it went.
Right. But I mean, that's how it is, right? So given that, the exam is becoming tougher, like I said, the marks required for 99 percentile are dipping. And again, the marks required to just crack those sectional percentiles again are dipping. So, for general candidates, the sectional percentile is 70 to 85 percentile for different IIMs. We, of course, also have institutes where you don't have a sectional cutoff at all. As long as, you're reaching the overall for an IIM Rohtak, that itself is something which is done. But again, so 70 to 85 percentile. So typically 70th percentile, which is what gets you to IIM Ahmedabad, a single digit score has been sufficient. And 85 percentile also, you're getting about 15 marks. And you, of course, had a few more also which came in correct. But if you had just those 5 questions and just 15 marks, that itself is something where, there's no institute where, you are not getting selected because of the sectional percentile. So again, an important message, I think, if a section is tough, then, as long as you're finding those easy questions, and it can be anything, right? Even in a tough verbal section, you would have an easy RC, or even a tough Quant section, you will have those 4 or 5 easy questions. And that is exactly what we should ideally try to find. So I think that's something which worked, right? And another thing, like you said, CAT is one of, many exams, right? So even if CAT goes badly, we have SNAP, NMAT, ZAT. And ZAT again, even though in CAT, the verbal was tougher because, that's your strength. And ZAT again is another exam where you have verbal and you have DM, where again, the English does play a little bit of a role. So I think there also you ended up doing really well on the verbal section. I remember your percentile to be pretty high. But I do remember that, because your quant was a little bit lower in CAT, I think that was one worry that you did have. You, of course, had a lot of interview calls, but I remember that, and the fact that, you're from a chemistry background. And also, I think because you were balancing work and prep, you hadn't had a lot of time to, brush up on the current affairs and all of that. So that was something which you had to do. So rather than me talking about it, why don't you tell everybody, like, again, what was the mindset like and how did you prepare for interviews? And then we'll probably talk about, like, one or two interview experiences also, because you've had some interesting ones.
So once the exam was over, I thought, okay, I think next year is my game, because this year I kind of felt that I didn't do well, like as well as I had expected myself to do. So compared to the mocks, I felt like, okay, this is just like an average attempt that I did. So, but then I was not sure whether my answers were right at that point of time. So after I think the answer key response sheet was out, and then after our scores were out, I was like, okay, fine, they turned out to be right. Okay, I'm relieved. So that's the mindset that I had. And then I had discussed with you and sir, and you had told me that I'd be eligible for a lot of calls. So as soon as the calls started coming, that's when the panic started to kick in, because until then I had not really focused on reading news or like being aware with the current affairs. Like that was my personal thing. So I was more, keen on doing the CAT prep. I was not like really being updated with the news, and something that I never used to do. So I was like, okay, the interview was in like Feb, but the calls were by Jan beginning or Jan 15th, I guess. That's when we got the calls, and I was like, okay, there's very little time. And my first interview was on Feb 7th. So then I religiously like read the newspaper every day, and then the articles that were put up on the Mockat's website. And then I went through like whatever I had left out, like all the major events that had happened like throughout the last year. And apart from that, I had to like brush my chemistry, topics as well, because even though I was working in that field, I was not really aware of the theory or the thing that, I mean, I wasn't able to recollect.
There's a lot, that is something which I recommend to everybody, right? Your HR questions, current affairs, and anything, something related to your ACADS or work. Those are the three main areas that are going to come up,
Yeah, so as you both had suggested, I had wrapped up the HR questions at the beginning. So after that was done, I went to like prepare on for my chemistry questions, the academic questions, and then the questions that were related around current affairs and, the general knowledge perspective questions like rivers and states and all of that, because I heard that was repeatedly asked.
The static GK is something which does come up. But I want to also highlight one thing that, we're talking about things which were a little tougher for you. The HR questions part and all was also easier for you because there were a lot of initiatives that you had. I mean, you've gone mountaineering, like you said, you've headed like a couple of committees. There's been a lot that you've done throughout school and college. So even though the work experience has been probably less than a year for you, all of these, again, the stories or the experiences that we talk about, right? So rather than saying, hey, my strengths are, I'm hardworking and driven and, I'm good at time management. If you have those examples, again, that's something which works. And for you, you had a lot of different examples. Like, I mean, going to Everest and all, for example, maybe 1 in 1,000 candidates would have some experience like that. So I think that also helps out a lot. And I also want to, like, if anyone's like, hearing what she's saying, and you're worried about current affairs, just go off to mockat.com. I think the daily news section is something which is available for free. So you can just start off. You have like 5 curated news articles there. But coming back to your experience, Shruti, so then how did you, like, just maybe talk a little bit about the preparation? So how do you prepare for the interviews and the interviews which we did, right, with us and, a bunch of folks? How did that sort of help you?
Yeah, so once I've wrapped up my questions, like the answers for all the various possible questions that I could think of. So once that was done, I had like attended mock interviews with you and sir, and I think that really helped me, because even though I was ready for the questions, I was not ready for the interview per se. So once I attended the mock interviews, I did know, okay, this is how an interview goes.
Yeah, we were working on your delivery, I
remember. And also how I was really nervous to like sometimes like when the questions that I did not know, I typically showed it on my face, and I knew that was something that I should get rid of. So these were things that I kept learning with the mock interviews that I had, and I think that really helped, because you were also like noted and told me the points that I should work on, or like rephrase in certain ways, and all of that helped me.
But then the thing which you spoke about, right, not knowing certain things, that's going to happen in every interview, right? So, and that, of course, that happened to you also, right? So, and that is how it is, right? Nobody's getting like, full 10 out of 10. I mean, you might get 10 out of 10 marks, but you won't get all the questions right. So how you address the questions which you don't know, or some gap or some issue which you have, like, I mean, you don't have it, but there'll be like, if you don't have a great ACADS or a gap year or something which you feel some weak point, again, how we address that, that also is something which the interviewers are looking at and scoring us. So, I mean, in your actual interviews, I mean, there were points which you didn't know, right? So maybe do you want to highlight one or two experiences and how you did? Because ultimately, despite that, you ended up converting most of them.
Yeah. So when I talk about my Lucknow interview, there were like questions that they asked on chemistry. So about my academic background. So those questions I was able to answer. And then moving on, then they asked me like questions that I did not know, like, business related questions, like what is the difference between an angel investor and a VC, which I was not aware. Like I had like very little time for that first interview, so I didn't go through the business point of question. So when they had asked me that, I typically told them, sorry, sir, I did not know. Like I do not know because I did not read about it.
And that's something which typically interviews do appreciate, that you're being honest and you're not making an excuse or saying that, hey, I've just forgotten or something like that.
Yeah. So because I did have an idea, but I wasn't sure of it, so I told him that. And then there were like questions that he asked me about more on business, like unicorns, naming unicorns and their CEOs. And also he asked me for like a recent news that I had read up on. So again, follow-up questions on that were asked. And then a few math questions were also asked. Again, there was this particular math question that I was not able to answer. Again, the specific use of prime numbers. So that was something I was not aware of, and I told them that, sir, I'm not aware. This is how my Lucknow interview went.
And in fact, I remember there were one or two questions where, I mean, it seems to be like a chemistry question, but there was a lot more of like, logical reasoning. Like I remember they asked you the pH of the human body, and you sort of derived it saying that, okay, I have to look at the pH of liquids, and, pH of blood is so much. So again, those are things, that presence of mind is something which, or that logical reasoning is something which really helps. And being calm, even if there's like, one question that you haven't answered, remembering that, okay, out of 10 or 15 questions, if there are 2 or 3 questions which I have not answered, it's still a great performance, right? So that's something which is there. And I think something similar also happened with you in the indoor interview, right? Where there were 1 or 2 questions which you weren't able to answer. So do you want to talk about that also maybe?
Yes, sir. So the indoor interview was like something that I was not really stressed about. Like I had gotten rid of my stress a little bit before I had gone for the interview. And
because that was one of your later interviews?
Yeah, one of the later interviews. So yeah, I had like I had gone through like a few interviews before that. So this one, I was less stressed. And the questions were also something not very easy, but like they were related to general knowledge. So for a few questions, I was able to answer related to my chemistry background. But then there were a few questions like, do you know that there's this state that has come up with edible clothing. So those were questions that I could not answer. Like, chemistry related to like general things that are happening around. Though I had read upon a few, I missed out a few.
Yeah, this is more of a unique thing which either you've read it or you haven't. It's very binary.
Right? So I told him that, and then there were like interesting questions that I would say. So they had asked me, like they gave me a hexagon. So hexagon, they asked me to draw a hexagon. So I drew a hexagon, and then they were like, so imagine this is to be a city. How would you go about planning the city? So that's when I thought for like a few seconds, and then I told him that, so probably I'll take one vertex to be the industrial area, and then the residential place would be on the opposite vertex, because because of the global warming or whatever, pollution and all of that. And then I said the offices and parks or whatever recreational things can be dispersed throughout the city. And then I said the network, like the connectivity, the transport and all should be interlinking all the vertices and the important cities that are there. So important places in the city. So that's something that I told him, and he was quite convinced with it. And then he asked me like a graph, he gave me a function and he asked me to plot a graph. That I did. So that was right. So the chemistry questions were the bit that I was not able to answer. So, but then like a few questions, and then these questions were something that I kind of thought about it and I answered. So that was my perspective, and he seemed quite satisfied. And then
and also
moving
because
on,
these questions, like like when you're plotting a city and how it should be, there's not one right answer, right? It's more of they're wanting to know your thought process and how you're thinking. So that thought process of, okay, I'll have the factories on one side and people living in the other because of pollution, shows that you're giving thought, or having the roads in such a way and things like that. How are we interlinking it? So that thought process is what they are looking at much more than the answer. So again, there's no one right answer, but it's more of how you're thinking. Go on.
And then there was this question. So they had gone through my certificates. The other professor was going through my certificates, like when I was answering. And then he got hold of this Himalayan trek certificate, and then he asked me like, how did you like reach Himalayas? And then I told him, like, from Chennai I took a flight to Delhi, and then from there we had like buses that took us up there. And then he told me, so from Chennai to Delhi, what are the states that you would go through? Like not the typical air route, but whatever you feel is the right answer. So then I thought of the states that are in between Chennai and Delhi, and then I told him the answer. Like I took a guess, and it seemed to be right. So that was one other interesting question that we had. And then the end, we had this extempore. So the question was, since I was from a chemistry background, he asked me, so talk about the chemistry between employees in a workplace. So that was the question. So I kind of plotted points, and I think we had like 1 minute to think. So that's when I spoke about.
So great, and like a lot of interviews for you went well also, and of course you ended up getting a lot of calls and ended up getting into my institute, IIM Lucknow, like I was saying in the beginning. So a couple of questions, Shruti, that we are asking everybody. Our classes are online, right? And obviously a lot of the prep and all is on the site. So how did that experience go for you?
Actually, it went really well because online classes like kind of like reduce the commute time and also the travel, or we get tired easily if we like keep traveling. So I think the online classes really helped in that front, because it was also, the timing was also very convenient, and we could like just sit at our home and like listen online. And I felt it was no different because we had access to like you both, and we could like ask questions to you easily, like whenever you had like given us time to like after the classes, that is. So, and I felt it was no different. Like we had the material like online, and then we had your classes also. The recordings were also one good thing that we had, like because of online classes.
That's one advantage.
So
online,
you could go through them like whenever you find like you forget something or something, of sorts. You can go through the videos and like learn. Okay. So that typically the online classes help me a lot.
Okay, that's great to hear. And another thing is like, during your CAT prep journey, this can be related or unrelated to Mockat. Is there any moment or any experience which stands out for you?
Yes, ma'am. So the first attempt that I had given, I didn't really give it like my best shot.
And all,
Yeah, I didn't really prepare. So my percentile was very low also. So, and then that was when I had to like ask my parents to let me, give it another year. So that's when my dad was not really happy with that idea. So he was like, let's just try to like go to some other college. Probably, why do you have to go to IIMs? So that was a thought that had come back then. So, but I was very keen on getting into an IIM. So I tried to convince, and also I think I spoke to Sir in you regarding this, and Sir actually
he
tried
had a
to
long conversation with your father.
Yeah. So then he explained of like getting into other colleges in an IIM are different and all of that. So after that, he let me like take it another year, and that's when I put my entire efforts and I tried to like maximize my score this time. And
but
you
again, made the best of that chance also, right? So
yes,
you got that extra year, and you made the best of that chance also.
Yeah. So I did like give my best, and once I had a Bangalore call as well. But unfortunately, I was not able to convert my Bangalore call. So what happened was, after I got like the wait list and the rejection lists were out, I was like quite upset. And then I had my dad like come up to me and ask, "So do you want to like give cat another year?"
That's
So that was
amazing.
a surprise.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so you finally understand that I'm capable, and
Right.
like you
Right.
know that I
Right.
can do it another year. So
Right.
that even though I was not considering it, I was like happy to hear that because
Yeah.
that's the change that one year has done.
Yeah.
And like how Sir and you had convinced them,
Right.
and like
Right.
it was
No,
that's the moment that stood out.
yeah, no, that's great to hear, and that's very important because a lot of people, either whether it's because of family or whether it is because of your own decision, a lot of times people also might not want to take that extra year. So yeah, one is, I mean, the respect that you get if you've graduated from an IIM, especially from a top IIM. Another is if we just look at it in terms of numbers, right? So if you are, I mean, you don't have a great CAT and you are getting in somewhere where, say, you're getting like 12-15 lakhs, so you can still get into a top 50B school and get somewhere around 12-15 lakhs. So take 15 lakhs to getting into IIM Lucknow, where the average now is, I believe, upwards of 30-32 or something like that. So that 15 to 30, right, going from 15 lakhs to 30 lakhs, which you've been able to accomplish in a year. Typically, if we are doing it from a working environment, it will take somebody at least 5 to 7 years to get there, right? Whereas here you're just able to take 1 year, and you're probably able to cut short quite a few years after you graduate. And along with that, of course, I mean, the brand value, the respect, the kind of role that you get, all of those are, of course, there. The experience, the learning experience that you have. I would still say ABC, yes, definitely. I mean, I don't want to be biased, are better than Lucknow, but you've got into a top 5 B school. So I think I also stand behind that decision of sort of maybe not taking it another year. But that's really great. And I mean, it was, I mean, real shout out to your parents for one, allowing you, and going to that extent of saying, yeah, I mean, like, I'm like perfectly happy to give it one more year also. And that's an important message, I think. And I hope, again, if there are any parents watching or anybody who's like, contemplating that I haven't got a great percentile, do I take it one more year? Hopefully this video sort of convinces you also to, give it one more shot. Great. Yeah. And so now we come to like, the fun part of this interview where, we've been talking about like, how you prepared for quant and stuff like that and all. So this is the rapid fire. So your answers can be as long or as short as you want, but the rule is you can't think before answering, right? Okay, so let's start off. So, which is your favorite section of the three?
Verbal.
Okay, who have you interacted with more, Vignesh or Sanjana?
Sanjana.
Okay, what was one quality that you feel every MBA aspirant should have?
Okay, I think consistency.
Okay, that's turning up to be quite a common answer actually. Okay, speed or accuracy for the exam?
Accuracy.
Okay, that's again great. Okay, which was more stressful for you, the exam or the interview?
Exam.
Okay, and do you think the interview was also easier because your percentile was high and you had a lot of calls? Do you think that helped?
Not really, but I knew that the interview was something to do like with what I had, like my background or the cats that I had, again, related to what I already know.
Okay.
And probably a little current affairs. But I was also aware that I could do only what I can do. So if I'm not able to cover everything, I might as well tell them that I'm not sure. So that was my take on the interview.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, again, as Vignesh says, in the interview, it's like they're trying to select you as opposed to reject you. So one or two questions, if you don't know, it's perfectly fine.
Yeah, and I think it's the presence of mind that matters when it comes to the interview. So, but whereas in the exam, it's something that you already have learned. So I think that was why the exam was what I was most stressed about.
Right. Okay. Okay. And what is a feature or aspect of Mockat that you made the most use of?
The QOTDs.
Okay, daily quizzes.
Quiz of the days.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. And what do you want to specialize in, or what type of role do you want to take up?
I'm not really sure, but I want to take either marketing or consulting. So I just want to give it like more thought and then decide.
Yeah, and again, right, for a lot of you who are watching this video, if you're going to be taking CAT for the first time, you might not be aware that typically your PGP is going to be a general program for the first year, where you're going to have finance, marketing, HR, strategy, IT, ops, all of these, law, and bunch of stuff. And then it's actually at the end of the first year that you're deciding what you're going to specialize in. So yeah, you do have that time to sort of decide. And last question, what is one piece of advice that you would give to somebody who's an MBA aspirant or who's taking CAT 2024?
I would say it's the persistence, the consistency that we actually have for the goal that we want to do. Because so when I was speaking about the moment that stood out for me, I recollect, I think I told you that my dad was initially hesitant, but then he was actually willing to give me another shot this time when I had put my hopes. So one thing that helped in that would be my consistency throughout the year, because the initial thing, it was my fault because I didn't put my maximum efforts. But then I had put the efforts for this year, and it turned out to be like reaping benefits because of that.
Right.
So I think that is one thing that everyone should focus on, and they would definitely be ups and lows. And probably don't judge yourself because of the marks that you get initially, because it's just the practice that you get. And also you should work on, like, doing the unattempted questions or the wrong questions after the marks are over. And I think that would actually help you get through it. And yeah, stress is something that you should get rid of. So this and consistency and how dedicated you are to like your prep, like to give your fullest in what you do, is what would actually, give you the results that you are looking for.
Great. Yeah, that's really great. And thanks, Shruti, for doing this. And I'm sure there are a few more chemistry grads for sure. But I think probably anybody who's, wanting to target a top B school should get a lot of value out of this. So thank you for doing that. And I think the majority of people actually in IIMs would have taken CAT at least twice. So that's something which is there. And that's how it is, right? You need to prepare. And if you're targeting a top B school, like, you want to get into like, the top 5 or the top 10 out of 5,000 plus B schools, of course, you have to put in the work. So great message. And thanks for doing this, Shruti. I'm sure not just chemistry grads, there's going to be a lot of MBA aspirants who you inspire. And it'll be interesting for me to follow your career and see whether you're getting into the marketing side or the consulting side. I think with the interview questions, you've already proved that, that LR, which is required, the logical reasoning, which is required for consulting, is something which you do have. So thanks. Yeah, thanks for doing this.
Thank you so much, ma'am. This was like a good opportunity for me to like inspire others, and it was really fun doing this interview. So thank you for this opportunity.
Absolutely.
All the best for CAT 2024.
All the best for CAT 2024.